Good evening, Justin. It is Wednesday, August 14th, and I am here with more reading suggestions. Today I'm specifically talking about 5 of my favorite science fiction novels that involve the defense of humanity. Defense against whom, you might ask? Actually, each of these novels features a different antagonist, and most of these novels are the beginning of a series. The first novel I'm going to discuss today is Old Man's War by John Scalzi. This is the first in a series done by Mr. Scalzi, and it's an interesting premise. Old Man's War was followed by the Ghost Brigades and Last Colony. In fact, he wrote a 4th novel, Zoes Tale, which is essentially the Last Colony told from, you guessed it, Zoe's perspective. Essentially, the premise of Old Man's War is that it's man versus everybody. There are numerous other alien life forms out there that are at various times hostile or friendly, and alliances change throughout the books. It's a very good series. Old Man's War was actually recommended to me by a good friend of mine, and he described it as an airplane novel. I read the entire book waiting for airplanes to show up. There are no airplanes. What he meant was it's the kind of book you can read on an airplane. It's a very quick read. It's a good page turner. It's an easy read, but it's very engrossing. So it's good for travel. All right, this next one's a classic. I don't have a copy of it, unfortunately, but I do remember very much enjoying Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and this is the beginning of a very substantial series. This book is very definitely an anchor in modern science fiction storytelling. If you haven't read it, Ender's Game is an interesting premise about man's defense of humanity against essentially bugs from afar. You never actually get some of the up-close and personal action, and it's probably relatively realistic in terms of what war in space possibly could be. Most of Ender's Game is in the preparation, the training of these young children, essentially, to be soldiers. All right, book number 3 was recommended to me by a friend in college. This is a classic made into a movie, and so I got the book after the movie came out, so it's got the movie, thing on the front. Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. It's a very good book. It might strike a little close to home at this point, given that you are deployed. If I remember right, this book was written back in the 50s, and it was a commentary, I believe, on World War II or possibly the Korean War. It can definitely be read and interpreted as sort of a social commentary, and I think that's one of the things that the filmmakers didn't seem to get quite right. If you're not aware, the main antagonists in Starship Troopers are bugs and from up close. Alright, my next recommendation is also a classic. It is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is, again, the beginning of a series, and a rather long series, if I recall correctly. I have only read the first one, but Dune was very good, very well done, very interesting premise, and essentially it's man versus man, colonials versus natives, essentially. If you haven't read it, it's definitely a must-read for any science fiction enthusiast. And finally, The Forever War by Jack Halderman. This is essentially man versus alien, and I don't actually recall specifically a lot of the plot points. I read this a while back. And it's a trilogy, if I recall correctly. I don't believe I've read the 3rd one in the trilogy, and I've been told that the follow-on stories aren't quite as good as the first one. I don't know how true that is. I remember it being a very good book, the first one, and an interesting premise. I remember the most salient point of the entire novel was essentially the long distances and times required in travel through space. So those are my science fiction novel recommendations featuring humanity defending itself. I do apologize for my absence over the past week. It's been kind of busy with starting a new job, but it's been going well. I hope you're doing well, and I will make another video for you soon. Good luck, Godspeed, see you next time.